All right, on to chapter 22. And so chapter 22 is about variances. And so essentially what we're going to be looking at, so let's say, for example, we have a direct material variance of $1,000. Well, that $1,000 can be a combination of two different things. It can be a combination of how much direct materials we bought. So maybe we sold more, so therefore we bought more direct material. And it can also be a function of what we paid for the direct materials per unit. So our total variance is actually a combination of a quantity and price. And so the chapter has several ways to do every one of these problems. The book has a lot of formulas. Formulas are great if you want to memorize those. I prefer kind of a visual approach to it, especially when I'm first starting to kind of learn it and go through it. It just makes it easier to see what's going on. And once you kind of have this visual approach down, it makes it really easy to figure out which formula to use, or to even kind of put together your own formula. And so kind of how these variances work is, it's a budget versus actual, what it is. So we have our actual cost of what we spent, and we have our standard or our budget. And so the difference between our actual and our budget is going to be the total variance. And to isolate what's just related to price and what's just related to the quantity, we do this flexible budget. And so the flexible budget is we take our actual quantity over here and our standard price and move it over here. And so then the difference between our actual cost and our flexible budget is going to be the price variance. And in the same way, the flexible budget minus the standard cost is going to isolate the quantity. So price cancels each other out. We're just comparing quantity. Over here, the quantity cancels each other out, and we're just comparing price. So in this problem, let's see, we have a Good Clean Fun Manufacturing, gives us some information, it gives us some actual numbers, and gives us some of our standard or budget numbers. And it wants us to calculate the standard direct material cost per unit for finished goods. Okay, it's kind of a mouthful. What does that mean? So it wants the standard direct material cost. And so that's going to be, hey, what did we plan on spending per 1 unit of finished good? And so if we kind of look at this, we can kind of figure out what formula to use. And so if we're trying to figure out our standard price, and it gives us information on our actual quantity, actual price, and then it also tells us what our direct material variance is, our price variance is, which is $1,500. So based on this, we can kind of write our own little formula here. So if we take our actual quantity times our actual price, so actual cost, subtract out our actual quantity times standard price, which is this over here, that is going to equal our price variance, which is $1,500. So we can write the formula 3,000 times 1,500, which is what we have right here, minus 3,000 times our standard price, which is what we have right here, equals 1,500. Now we just have to solve for our x. So we can rearrange it. We ended up solving for it, and we have a standard price of $5 per pound. Now that's not our answer because it's asking us for the standard direct material cost per unit of finished good. This is per pound of raw material. And so it tells us here that we use 2 pounds for every unit of finished good. So if we multiply that times 2, we get the standard direct material cost per unit for finished good. And so for comparing, what it's saying is we planned on spending $8 in direct material cost, but what we actually spent was this 550 times 2, or 11. So we actually spent 11, and we meant to spend 1,500, And so this is a unfavorable price variance of $1,500. All right, so let's jump to problem 22-9. And so in this problem, we have Reincarnation Bicycle Companies manufactures commuter bikes, and it gives us some information for April. So we can actually start filling in our little chart graph. I guess it's neither one of those. Anyway, so actual quantity. Okay, let's go through what it's trying to ask us for. So it's asking for the direct labor rate variance and the time variance, and then the total direct labor cost variance. So the rate variance, that's going to be the hourly rate or the price variance, and then the time is the quantity variance. And so it tells us that our actual quantity of hours used was 1530, and we paid $17 per hour. And for the standard quantity, so we want total hours used, and so it says that it's 3 hours per bike, and we did 500. Plan on doing 500 bikes, so 500 times 3. So we planned on 1,500 hours. And then the standard price, it gives us $17.50. Now the formulas are already inserted here. We have quantity times price is $26.10. 15 times $17.50. So our standard was $26,250. And then our flexible budget just takes our actual quantity, and then our standard price gives us a flexible budget of $26,770. So actual cost minus the flexible budget gives us our price variance at a negative $765. Now, that is a favorable variance. So it's a negative number, but it's still favorable. And so you have to kind of think these through a little bit, and that can change. So negatives aren't always going to be favorable, and vice versa. It kind of depends on, are we talking about revenues, sales, or are we talking about cost? So you have to think through it a little bit. And so in this situation, we have our cost is $26.10, where the standard is $26,770. So our cost is less. Negative number, but we have less cost than we expected. That's favorable. That's a good thing. Now the quantity variance, we take our flexible budget times our standard cost, gets us a quantity variance of 525. Now that's an unfavorable variance because our standard was 1,500 hours, but we did actual hours more of 1,530. So because of putting in more hours, we incurred $525 more of cost. So overall, we had a favorable variance of $240, but that's partly because our good price variances was offset by more hours putting in. So kind of fun. It takes a little bit to kind of get used to them, but once you kind of get used to this setup, these problems actually are they're kind of easy and they're kind of fun. So.